Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, from wherever you're reaching us out from. We have people logged in from Kenya. We have some from as far as Great Britain, the USA, the United Kingdom, Burundi, and other neighboring countries within Eastern Africa and also Southern Africa. Karibu tena, this is the ACJJ. My name is Julian and I'll be your moderator for the day. And we have lined up for you an interesting program made up of different sessions, which I shall take you through. The first part will be an introduction of this webinar, and we thank you for logging in. And we shall go on to the second session where we shall highlight what has made us all come together, which is the African Council of Juvenile Justice. We shall explain more about who we are and why we have been established and what the objectives are for the work that we want to do. We shall then get into our guest speaker's presentation. Her name is Nandifa Marion, and she is actually the national coordinator for the Child Justice Forum in Zambia that is made up of various stakeholders working together on behalf of children in Zambia in a bid to create access to justice for children. Our next session will then be followed by having a presentation by Honorable Lady Justice Mumbwa Teresia Matheka, who is the chairperson of the National Council of the Administration of Justice here in Kenya, and basically is going to be making a presentation on behalf of the Special Task Force on Children's Matters in Kenya. After that presentation, we shall open after every session, we shall open up the presentations to questions from you, the participants, to the panelists, and we shall then conclude the session for the day at before 1 o'clock. I hope that this will be enjoyable for you. Feel free to ask questions in the chat box from wherever that you're reaching us on, and I would still encourage you to register to be part of the ACJJ, and we shall be putting the details of how to link with us in the chat boxes wherever you're reaching us out from. Thank you very much. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our the webinar. So this webinar has been created in a bid to basically create awareness on the benefits of partnership and collaboration in juvenile justice. And so we shall be undertaking case studies of 2 entities, one in Kenya and one in Zambia, that is working towards creating a better world for children through juvenile justice, through juvenile justice reforms, and also by working together with private sector actors and government actors alike. Before we go on, I shall also introduce the first speaker of this session, who shall be none other than a renowned officer of CHEFA, and who will be making a presentation on the ACJJ, explaining why the ACJJ has been created and what we expect to see from the ACJJ moving forward. Patrick is going to be our next speaker, and he shall introduce himself further and explain why we are here and perhaps bring more light into this new entity that has just been established called the African Council of Juvenile Justice. Again, Karibu from wherever you are calling us from and reaching in from, and may this session be quite useful for you. As we wait, you can feel free to start asking any questions that you may have on the ACJJ, and Patrick can always maybe get them as he makes his presentation, and even after his presentation. Karibu, Patrick.
Thank you so much for your, thank you so much, Julian. Lady Justice, Honorable Lady Justice Teresia Mateka, Madam Nadifa Gurube Chikomba from Zambia, the coordinator of Child Justice Forum in Zambia. I am here to talk about the African Council on Juvenile Justice. This is an idea that we have come up with as an organization, and I'm going to take a brief session to speak about how this idea came about. So once again, I also take this chance to welcome all our participants from wherever they are, and just to tell them that this one idea that we are talking about on the African Council on Juvenile Justice, it is an idea that came from outside, but was first embraced by an organization called CHEFA. CHEFA Kenya are the ones who have been championing this idea. Since back in 2016, we are collaborating with some of our partners, the OJJ in Europe, and as a result, we came to know about other juvenile justice councils that were happening in Europe, in Asia, Latin America, and so on. And we thought that this could be a good idea. We decided to join hands together with some of our stakeholders in the country, and we managed to bring on board some people that could think along. But at that point, we fell short of some funding, and we were not able to continue with the idea. But we came back, and the idea has been arrived, and this was back in 2016. At the moment now, we had already begun putting up some objectives, and one of the objectives is to create a network of various actors in the juvenile justice system with experience in legislation, application, supervision, research, and intervention on juvenile justice in Africa, with the aim of trying to define what are the priorities for juvenile justice. And as a result, we managed to bring other stakeholders on board who have also been encouraging us to go on with this. It is because of this that we have come out to reach out to our counterparts locally here in Kenya and also in Africa. And as a result, we have been able to bring a consortium of many agencies, including individuals, professionals, and experts in juvenile justice, as well as interested organizations that are working in the sector. And the importance of this council is for us to come together to exchange experiences, exchange best practices, and learn together. And as we proceed with this presentation, you will come to see some of the areas that probably would suit you, or depending on what you are doing out there in other parts of the world, and you'll be able to provide a platform through which you can showcase what we are doing. Next slide, please. As part of this, we have thought some areas that we think that could be of a great importance. Part of them is like bringing the academia, and we have realized that there is a lot that is going on in areas of research by lecturers, by university professors, by students within the universities, and also other agencies that are dedicated in research. But much of that research does not actually come back to feed into the justice system. And we find that there is a gap between what is being researched and what is being practiced within the justice system. And we thought that by bringing other stakeholders, we can try to bring in and see how much that can feed into the sector. And we are also trying to bring in the knowledge and the experiences and the professionalism of civil society organizations that are doing various presentations, and they are also doing various programs and interventions out there in regard to juvenile justice, right from the community, going all the way to the mainstream justice system. And there is a lot that is happening. There is a lot of influence and a lot of good practices that is being practiced by the civil society organization. But one question we're asking ourselves, how much are we able to collaborate and to bring this together in a way that has actually been felt by our children that we are serving? And of course, we cannot forget the good work that is being brought forward by the public sector through the administration, line ministries, line departments, and agencies that are mandated in regard to matters to do with access to justice, protection of children within the justice system. So we are also looking at how we could bring on board those bodies. And in doing so, we are connecting so much with the judiciary, because for us, in our country, for instance, here in Kenya, the judiciary has been this one big champion of enabling access to justice for children. And we feel that there is a lot that is happening in terms of them being the lead agency, bringing in their professionalism. And we have so many judges, we have prosecutors, we have judicial officers that actually are helping us to see what is it that we can do. So we are looking at these 4 areas in which we can bring our synergy together through the academia, through the civil society organization, through the line ministries and departments, and also through the judiciary, and look at how can we best bring out a justice system that is reputable, that all of us as Africa, we can celebrate and say, this is something good that is happening. Next slide. And one big question we're asking ourselves in coming up with the African Council on Juvenile Justice, what are some of the functions that we think that the council could be playing? And we see that there is a lot. We are looking at abilities in which the council could help in building capacity. So none of us can be able to grow if we are working by ourselves and isolated in our own corners. And we believe that by bringing African countries, there is a lot that we can be able to learn through the capacity building. For instance, even in
I think we're having a connection issue with Patrick. However, we shall give him a few minutes to connect with us. I think the weather here in Nairobi is also affecting. It's quite cloudy. But in the meantime, I'd like to be sharing a few statistics on children for those who are not aware of the different statistics that we have. Here in Kenya, 53% of the population is children, and about 19 million of the people that are within our country are actually children. And so we definitely have a lot to do to secure our futures by having our children and their futures safeguarded. And for the other country that we will be looking at, which is Zambia, 45.9% of the population are children, with the median age being 16, which is one of the lowest in the world as per reports from 2018. I see that Patrick is back, and perhaps we can let him continue with his presentation.
I am sorry for that. I think there was some power fluctuation that interrupted the internet. I apologize for that. We were talking about how we can be able to pull together in terms of bringing our resources together. We can be able to advocate in terms of how best can we channel our resources. By coming together, we shall be avoiding other things like duplication, allocating resources where the priorities are not they are not identified. And I feel, and we feel, that this council will bring people together and be able to resource mobilize. There is also an issue to do with the research and validations. We are looking out how we can be able to do joint researches. And for instance, some of the researches that have been done previously, research on violence against children, research on child labor, how well can we be able to learn with what is happening? Right now, you look around, there is a lot that is happening in the digital media, and we are seeing our children becoming more and more exposed. Are there researches that are guiding us as actors on how best probably we can continue protecting our children? So that is another area that the African Council is looking forward to in regard to research and validation. Another area is in terms of the benchmarking. Benchmarking in terms of who is doing what out there. And I think through this presentation, we are also going to hear our colleagues in Zambia, what they are doing. And since we have had some interactions before, I feel like there is a lot that we can also learn. In as much as they can also learn from Kenya, we can also learn from other countries that are represented here. So the benchmarking is there something that we can borrow from there and be able to domesticate in our country and vice versa? Next, please. Yes, and much more also what we are looking is how we can enhance our lobbying at national level and even at regional level. Our government giving priorities to matters to do with the children within the justice sector? We look at, for instance, issues to do with the access to justice, which I believe that is going to be discussed further in these sessions. And you find that there is a lot that is missing in terms of lobbying. Lobbying in the area of legislation, in the area of progressive policies, lobbying in the area of allocation of resources, as I had mentioned a lot. And I think not only lobbying internally for our governments, lobbying at the regional level. What is it that we can lobby that the African Union can do for us further in regard to the juvenile justice? How much can we do in terms of lobbying at the UN level? How much can we do in lobbying in ensuring that areas probably where there is an atmosphere of lack of adherence to the laws? What can we do to make the nations that are involved ensure that actually they are implementing documents such as the UNCRC, the African Charter, and of course the domestic laws? And we are also looking at other areas on how we can enhance in terms of how we collect data and disseminate them. In part of the project that we have been doing, we were trying to see what is it that we can be able to do to document real-time documentation of cases of children that we are tackling within the justice system. For instance, here in Kenya, we are beginning to do something. Last year, we launched a platform that we call the Juvenile Justice Information Management System. Of course, we are very much in the learning stages, but we may be able to find out there countries that are able to do that. What is it that we can be able to do in enhancing in collection of data? And that is the data that will inform our programming and data that will inform designing projects that are connected to children. And of course, we are also going to look at abilities to see that there is proper monitoring of what we have legislated at the country level, and also at institution level. How much are we adhering to our regulations, our laws, and our policies? And of course, the other area that we think that the ACJJ can play as a function is the formulation of policies that are progressive and that are more protective to children. Next. Next slide, please. Yeah. How do we envision the operational framework? How are we thinking that we can engage one another? This is a proposal that we are putting out there, and I'm encouraging the partners who are here in this session to look at it as something that that we can grow it together. But in our thinking is that we might need to have some terms of reference, some engagement on how we can agree. And this is for the members and the people that have already seen quite a number of people and agencies that have expressed their desire to join the council. And I believe that there are others more who are going to come. This being the first webinar, I feel that we are well placed in a way that we can begin to do this engagement. Come up with some terms of reference that can guide us. Maybe also come up with an MOU among the member organizations and even individuals who join the council as, as professionals. Members engagement strategy on work, come up with work plan and MOU on how we can proceed engaging one another in the council. We were also thinking about how to come up with national structures, establish national structures within the country, and we see how those could be operational in terms of how they are coordinated, having at the top maybe a structure that runs activities and runs the programs and being castigated at the local level. So that is what we look at in terms of the operational framework. Next. Yes. Sorry, you come back to the previous. Next now. Yes, that is how the coordination would take place. The part of the still envisioned coordinated framework, formation of a secretariat that will help coordinate programs and activities of the council, and then we can be able to kind of cluster countries according to their strategic position that they are in. We know that all the countries are not in the same level in terms of the laws, the legislations, the programs that they are running. We are all at different levels. So how can we cluster ourselves and see how best we can support probably the countries that are ahead and those that also are probably behind in certain sectors, and we come together to uplift one another. We look at some of the countries that already have got some structures that are functioning in terms of coordinating the agencies. What is it that they can take out to countries that probably do not have such? And those countries can be able to learn from there. And then the other one is maybe strategic profiling of the members. We need to map out our professionals, the experts that are out there. We need to know who we can rely for policy development, whom can we rely for advocacy. We know that there are organizations dedicated for that. We know that we can rely on others in terms of enhancing coordination and so on. And then by bringing all this together, we shall have been able to resource out strengths, and we shall be able to have mapped out where do we identify gaps and probably needs, and we need to concentrate maybe on those countries and uplift them and support them in institutionalizing their coordination and networking capacity. So the ACJJ could come to play that role. And then we are putting this one as a proposal out there. We can look at a possibility of where probably we might be able to have rotational based leadership, such that countries can also take the mandate of championing the idea of this African Council. So the Secretariat will be there to support, to run the day in, day out activities of the Council. But in terms of the leadership, we can think of probably going in a rotational basis. Next. Again, that you look at, we are looking at what we are thinking in terms of the coordination, where we have the secretariat and we have a national structure. And the national structure would be focused so much in terms of now looking at what is happening in terms of the implementation of activities and programs. We know that in some countries, the structures are already there. So the council can take also some time to look at what is in existence and learn out of it. We know in some other countries, there is no such existence of those structures, but probably now through the council, we can see how we can empower those countries, establish their own structures. And as you look at that, you see the national coordination. We also have sector representatives, and probably we also have at the bottom, the thematic areas representatives. So these people from the national coordinators to the sector representatives going to thematic representatives are feeding now to the national structure. And the national structure is being, of course, supported by the secretariat. And the secretariat is the one that is helping to communicate now with the entire council members out there in Africa. Next. Yeah. So in any forum that one will be able to think of joining, one of the big questions that we ask, what is it that we can benefit out of it? What is it that we can leverage in terms of this engagement that we are going to have? And we think that the African Council of Juvenile Justice would be able to help in creation of a robust synergy of diverse actors on children's rights and issues like the restorative justice, working together for the best interest of the child within the system. So we feel like there is a lot that we can be able to benefit from in bringing the synergy. Okay, formation of comprehensive platform for sharing of knowledge and information on children's rights and maybe restorative justice. We are looking at this aspect of restorative justice because right now it is coming, and later on in the presentation, in some of the slides, you'll see some of the priority areas that were picked by some of the participants who are in this session, showing how restorative justice is beginning to pick and beginning to be appreciated from the perspective that we are beginning to appreciate that we need not over-rely on the mainstream justice system, such that every other case has to go through the justice system. And we are looking at our own resources as Africans and what we used to do before, the system that were there. How can we go back to those systems, strengthen the community-based systems so that they can respond more adequately to issues to do with the access to justice for our children? The other one is to strengthen of local and international network for mutual benefit and also satisfying engagements. So that is an area that we all have to come together as partners and look at it. What areas do we need to strengthen ourselves? And I think I've already said at local level, at national level, also at international level. So this is some of the benefits that we think that the African Council could be able to bring forth. Next. Yeah, then we're asking ourselves, these ideas could be good, but how are we able to promote them going forward? So what are some of the foundational sustainability structures or necessities that we would require to have? We think that by having active engagement of members in the council, we shall be able to continue and we shall be able to popularize this idea. By reaching out to other sectors out there, other countries, we feel that the engagement and being able to meet quite often and being able to run programs together, we could be able to sustain ourselves going forward. There is also the issue to do with formulation and implementation of MOUs, where the members would commit themselves to be part of this, to participate. We are also envisioning where we can continue lobbying for budget allocation, for networking and coalition building in juvenile justice. And I said this is lobbying at local, at national level, as well as international level, engaging of members in financing the processes and activities initiated by the council. This is something that probably we might need to think a lot on how probably we can come together, be able to, pull resources together so that the activities of the council could go on. Establishing a secretariat to ensure day in, day out running of the operational activities. As a council, we need like a body that will be seeing what programs we are running, engaging countries, and so on and so forth. And of course, the participation of the members in decision-making process. And we are calling upon the members who are present here today. First of all, to thank you that you are in this. We invited you, but more to it is that we had tried to nurture the idea, but this idea cannot be complete if all the members are not brought on board. And I believe by you registering your presence here today is a clear expression that you want to be part of this, and we would like to see how well your ideas are incorporated. And we shall listen as we complete how well we can engage you and how well you can bring in your suggestions and ideas to ensure that this council takes shape. Next. So we have also kind of come up with tentative themes and topics for discussions, and what probably we shall be able to run with as we move ahead in the justice system. What is it that is catchy? What is it that is coming out? However, these topics and themes are not limited, and I would put a disclaimer that we are looking forward for the contributions. Even if we have the broad thematic areas, we are calling for members to come in and see what is it that we can enrich in those thematic areas. And in case there is something that we have left out in the thematic areas, we are calling for members to contribute to it. Next slide. Some of the thematic areas you see, we are looking at an area like areas, access to justice for children within Africa. Though we talk about within Africa, we are not limited into learning from outside Africa, what best practices are happening outside Africa, as well as what is happening within our continent. Yes. We are also looking at making child-friendly justice systems. And for instance, like I may give an example in a project that we have been doing as CHEFA. There's a project we are doing on diversion and restorative justice. We have collaborated very much with the judiciary, but we have also been able to see that there is a lot that we are learning, and we are able to pick in a very special way for courts that are specialized for children. In Kenya here, we have two courts. We have Milimani Children's Court. Those are just dedicated for children. And also we have the Tononoka Children's Court. And there is a lot that is happening. But we are also looking at the courts that are not specialized for children, and trying to bring on board programs that we are implementing within the children's court, specialized children's court, and making those courts function like specialized children's courts. And an issue to do with the child-friendly justice system, it is an issue that we need really to look at. I remember, I think the Day of the African Child, was it last year? The theme was about how to make our justice system to be more friendly to to children. And as a result, we are able to discuss quite a lot. And we feel that we are getting connected to what the African Union has been thinking about. And as members, as practitioners in the sector, we cannot rest until that time when we say that our justice system is gradually but improving daily to making it a child-friendly justice system. Next. The other aspect is to do with the institutionalization of children, and also enhancing programs that are related to reintegration. We, for a long time, and I think even in this country, we have overly relied that every child who comes into the justice system will end up going to the institution. And we are looking at, is this the best practice that we can have? And we say, okay, yes, institutions are serving us, and there is a lot that children benefit from these institutions. But we also know that these children come from their families, and these children come from their homes. And we are looking at how best we can deinstitutionalize children, get them back to their communities and to their families. We know that the UNCRC advocates that, the African Charter advocates that actually the best place for a child to grow is within the family setup. So can our institutions be temporary places rather than where children go to overstay? Secondly, what we are asking ourselves, is it every child who needs to go to an institution of rehabilitation? And currently, I know here in Kenya, and I think even probably I will hear also from other parts of Africa, there is a lot that is happening in regard to removal of children from within the institutions. In our country here, we have heard a lot about what is happening in Rwanda. I do not have first-hand information, but I know that there are some Kenyan counterparts, both in state and non-state agencies, who have had even to go to benchmark in Rwanda to look at what has Rwanda been able, how Rwanda has been able to achieve. And I believe that we shall be having people from Rwanda, and maybe also we have some on board, maybe in this session, and it could be good to learn what is it that they have been able to do. I am not only citing Rwanda because it's only the nation that probably has been able to do in that area. Maybe there are also other countries that I don't know about. But removal of children within the institution, and ourselves considering institutions as the last resort, as an option of the last resort, I think that is the best way and the best route for us to follow. Next. And of course, the other thing that we need to look at as a thematic area and as a topic is issues to do with case management. Case management of children right from the time they are entering the justice system. How best are we able, how well are we able to communicate among our actors? We have had previously seeing that actually cases taking quite long within the justice system, simply because this agency or that agency, maybe they did not do their role or their work at the right time. How can we enhance our case management? A case management that actually speaks to the children and also speaks to the system. A case management that does not prolong children cases. So, and I think there is a lot, we have had quite a lot in learning in this country. What we're asking ourselves, what protocols, what procedures are there? What case management practices are we adopting? Are we adopting case management practices that are retrogressive or those that are progressive to ensure that children are able to move quickly, while at the same time ensuring that quality of service is ensured? Next. The other area is we need to look and we need to really critique ourselves, and I'm calling upon institutions of higher learning, the role of the academia in influencing change and improvement of the child justice system. I believe maybe also in other countries that just like it is here in Kenya, there is a lot of research that is happening, both in institutions of higher learning, institutions that are dedicated to research and development. But how much of that goes to inform policies, inform procedures, inform processes, inform our way of doing things, the practices that we are adopting? So we are calling and we are challenging different countries. We are challenging ourselves also as a country. How can we bring on board the role of the academia to be able to be a source and a mirror that tells us, here we are doing well, and here we are completely off track? Thank you. The next. So, when we started engaging this, and I think we have been engaging, and some of the members who have already registered, we asked the members, what is it that you think from your head that is a priority area? And in the subsequent slides that we are going to see, members who are in this session, and I believe probably others who maybe did not manage to join, had already selected some areas that they think that these are topical issues that we need to discuss, and some of the topical issues that have been proposed to the council, that the ACJJ council could look at it and be able to advance these areas. Members have proposed issues to do with the legal representation of minors in conflict with the law. I think it is an issue that we are grappling with here in the country, and I believe that probably also in other countries. Capacity building for parents, caregivers, and community on children's rights and access to justice system. Issues to do with service provision for incarcerated minors. Issues to do with monitoring government compliance with the child protection laws. That we are challenging ourselves as sector members, that we also need to put our governments to be more accountable to what they are doing, and how the kind of access to justice system that they are providing. For instance, we look at all the way from the time the child comes to the like for our case here, the first entry to the justice system is at police station level. So we are looking at and asking the police at that level, what is it that you guys are doing to make sure that our children are treated in the most respectable way, that we are adhering to the international treaties that we are parties to, and we are also adhering to the national laws and processes and procedures. What is it that we are doing? And not only the police, we go to the prosecution, to the judiciary. What is it that we are doing to institutions where rehabilitation is taking place, to correctional facilities? What is happening in those institutions? And we put our government more accountable in terms of the compliance. And we're asking our governments also, are we putting enough resources for access to enable institutions and duty bearers that have to do or have to ensure access to justice to the children? Are they well funded? So those are some of the issues that we have to look at. We also look at the traditional justice systems. Is there something that within our cultures that we have practiced before that can be incorporated within the justice system and that can inform, and we say that our justice system is becoming more progressive because of that? Next. So in this graphics, you see there, you can be able to pick out what is it that members of this forum, those who have expressed joining and being party to it, you can see clearly by the statistics. And I believe that these statistics will continue evolving because much more members are expressing their desire to join. We are looking at all issues to do with service provision. You can see the numbers there. You can see issues to do with partnership and collaboration at 26%. There is also policy development and implementation, 29, 31 from all the other sectors. So you can see that members are already beginning to understand and to appreciate that there are certain areas that we need to focus on. And I would like to primarily talk to the area that is highlighted by green in the first chart, partnerships and collaboration. And this is what we are doing today. Through this webinar, we are bringing stakeholders, diverse stakeholders, from those dedicated in policy, in administration, those who are dedicated into implementation, all levels, where we have brought them together, and we are looking at how can we enhance our partnership and our collaboration. And the other chart you find there is areas of intervention, the thematic areas. And the thematic areas you see quite a lot. People are talking about implementation of restorative justice practices. And I think it is very interesting looking at this, because when I look back, a couple of years back, I think around even as recent as 2019, 2018 there, in this country, in Kenya, we did not speak so much about restorative justice. But right now is a topical issue and that we need to give priority to. I don't know even in other countries. So you see, members of who have expressed to join this council, they are talking about what is it that we can look at in implementation of restorative justice. And I think that it's a good to give it attention to. They have also talked about implementation of diversion programs. And I think in the subsequent presentations, this is something that is going to come up. And we'll hear about that. I was so much pleased when we reached out to Zambia, and they have something that we can learn in terms of what they are doing in regard to diversion and restorative justice. And we also talk about the institutionalization of children. It is another topical area that members of this partnership, those who have joined and they have expressed, they want to see. Meaning that the fact that you have been able to pick those topical issues, it means that it is something that is connecting to what you go through in terms of the programs that you learn day in, day out. Thank you. We can go to the next slide. And the next slide is not so much about the presentation, but I am here to kind of provoke the thoughts of the members who are in this session, and by asking, what do you think that you would change about the justice system in your context? You come from whatever sector you come from, whatever country you come from. Is there something that you think that you can change? And what is that you think that you can change? What is it that you think is a best practice and you would want to share with us, and even to probably bring us to the context? What best practice would you like to share from your context? I believe that there is a lot, and there are so many best practices that we are learning out there. And these best practices can be able to be embraced by other countries outside there. Even at country level, what best practice are you doing? And probably it is not known by your counterparts in the same country, but it is a practice that can go to assist and ensure that there is increased protection of our children, and our justice system is a justice system that we can look in the mirror and admire and congratulate ourselves. Next. Yeah, so I think this one I will be taking it back to my colleague Julian. You can be able to follow us through the social media. If you need to do the registration, there is the info on the ACJJ, the African Council on Juvenile Justice. You can write us an email. And also, I think we have tried to be quite active in the social media. So you'll see our Facebook accounts, Instagram, and so on. So thank you so much for taking time to listen to me. I think I've been able to break down some aspects of what we think that this African Council on Juvenile Justice could take. But this African Council on Juvenile Justice, though we are the people who are championing it from this end, this is not our council. I am calling upon you to look at it as your council, something that you can identify with, and we are calling upon you how you can come and contribute to this idea. We are open to engagements. We know that there are some things probably we have thought them right. There are some things that would need improvement, and that's why we are calling for your contribution. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Patrick, for that insightful presentation. I'm sure some of you have had a number of questions once you received an email from us asking about the African Council, and we would be happy to connect with you to answer more specific questions about the African Council on Juvenile Justice. And we appreciate all those people who have so far given us feedback, who have already asked questions, and those who would like to know more. So kindly, we shall paste the information of how to connect with us on the chat boxes, and you'll be able to write to us, and we'll be able to customize a presentation for yourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, we have just finalized the first session of our webinar, which was an introduction to the African Council of Juvenile Justice that has brought us here today. We've undergone a brief overview of the project that has helped us establish this from all the way back in 2016 and until now, and what the background of this idea has been, what the concept is, the opportunities. And just to summarize, some of the things that have come up from Patrick's presentation is that networking is necessary as growth does not happen in isolation. And it's interesting that now we are going to be having presentations by the judiciary, which is part of the public administration, which is being a champion for access to justice and is a lead agency on access to justice for children. Some of the things that have also come up through the presentation is that, we need to learn through collaboration, which will prevent duplication and promote benchmarking amongst actors on topics such as the deinstitutionalization of children from countries such as Rwanda. Some of the food for thoughts and proposals that have been suggested are the mapping of gaps and needs of stakeholders in the sector, enhancing lobbying at local, regional, and international levels. And that's why we are talking about structuring it both country-wise and also thematic-wise, meaning we are also bringing different countries with the same strengths together. We'll also be harnessing collective resources we have as Africa in order to better the lives of the children, who are within Africa. And the most important thing is the role of academia to influence change through research and development, which informs development. I've seen that we have logged in, for instance, a university such as Tangaza University that has suggested that they'd like to connect with us more and to see how they can assist. I've also seen a comment from Romano Ikulu from AfriNov organizations, where they say that in terms of advocacy, they'll be able to bring richness of strategy in social change movements administered through a tool that they would like to also share called the Turning the Tide. We also have Muko from Lesotho. I hope I have pronounced your name correctly. And she says that I really appreciate the issue of lobbying within our countries, and it would be good to learn from the colleagues. And the notable thing about Lesotho is that just like the NCAJ and the Child Justice Forum, they also have a coalition that's made up of both public administration and civil society actors working together to improve service provision to children. So ladies and gentlemen, that was the conclusion of the first session, and I'm sure some of us would have, we have some questions and would also like to make some contributions. And I hear from our team, we'll have two sessions. There's going to be a questions and answers. There are questions and answers on social media. And also we have a certain activity that I'd like for all of us to do. And my technical team will be assisting me to undertake this activity. So I'd like for everyone to go to menti.com. So type out on your phone, menti.com. It's currently being displayed on your screen. So when you go to menti.com, just input the code 26895666. So I'll give us a few minutes to just undertake this activity. And the question that we'll be asking is, how does a weak network and collaboration system affect service delivery by child justice and juvenile justice actors? So once
what
you
is the code again?
26. It's on the chat box. 2689 5666. 2689 5666. So once you answer the question, you will see your answer popping up on the screen. And basically, we'll be getting an idea of how a weak network and collaboration system affects service delivery. You have 3 entries, And so I shall give you a few minutes to be able to undertake this activity. If you have any challenges, please just write to our technical teams. We have people on standby who will be assisting you with any challenges you may be having. So how does a weak network and collaboration system affect service delivery by child justice and juvenile justice actors? Just to repeat for those who have not gotten the code is 26895666. 26895666. So I already see there are some responses that are coming in. So children will suffer for long. Let's see which other ideas people have on a weak networking system. So I see there'll be duplication of efforts, meaning also resources that could have been used together for collective action would be going to waste. There are children who will be molested, children fall through the justice system, there's delayed justice. I hope you can see your responses coming in through the screen. There's also injustice, quality of service to children. Please note to make your responses short so that you're not cut off. So if you could use 1-word or 2-word answers, it will make your response even better. So I can see child trauma being one of the things there. Rights abuse, non-participatory approaches affect service provision by not networking and collaborating. So I'll give this, you can still continue to put in. I will be displaying the screen at the end of the call for everyone to see their answers. So don't feel shy to continue writing your answers even as the call goes through. I see a comment here from Peter Kabwagi that also cases take too long to be concluded. So I'm also seeing slow responses to service provision, injustice, delayed, weak networking and collaboration results to injustice for children. I see injustice comes out a lot. There's also non-accountability coming on, and children's voices are also ignored. So ladies and gentlemen, please keep your comments coming through, even as we continue into now the second session. But before we do, there are some people who have questions. Yes.
Oh yeah, imagine I thought I said take the money, your message is in my head. I'm sorry.
Technical team, could you please assist Lady Maseka? Thank you.
Hello, Julian. This is Kevin speaking. So how can we assist her?
She's been muted. Thank you.
Two?
Okay, she's muted. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we prepare for the second session, the second session will just include the presentation from the Child Justice Forum that is based in Zambia. So currently, as we speak, Zambia is undergoing its general elections, and because Nandifa was very passionate about making this presentation, we shall be watching her pre-recorded session. And in a few minutes, just as I continue seeing more responses coming in, I shall be reading out her profile. Do not worry if you feel like there are more questions you have based on these sessions that we've had. We shall be having a question and answer session even after this webinar with the various speakers, where you're able to ask more questions, and especially to Nandifa, who is currently on the voting lines as we speak. So feel free to write your questions in the chat box that you may have on her presentation, and we shall continue with the session. Going back to this, I see that people are saying that if there's also weak networking and collaborations, people also resolve to kangaroo justice systems. So the quality of service also to children is really affected, and cases are taking too long seems to be something that is coming out quite commonly. Thank you for the magnification. We shall go now to our next session, where I shall be reading the profile of our next speaker, who is Nandifa Gulube, who is our guest speaker all the way from Zambia. So Nandifa Gulube Chikobo is a lawyer and a juvenile justice specialist with a bias in criminal justice and human rights. She has a vast experience in adjudication, strategic planning, policy formulation in the juvenile justice sector. She is currently the national coordinator for the Child Justice Forum, which is in Zambia, which is also led by the judiciary. As a leading expert in juvenile justice, she's a trainer of key child justice actors in child rights, juvenile justice, diversion, and guidelines for minimum standards for child victims and witnesses. Her vast experience is drawn from working with international and regional organizations such as Save the Children, UNICEF, amongst others, and therefore she sits on several policy formulation, technical working, and steering committees at the national level. She's also a 2015 Mandela Washington Fellow and is passionate about developing restorative interventions that actualize the reformation of juveniles and facilitate the reintegration of children back into their communities. On a side note, her interests lie amongst others in journaling, reading, traveling, and she also says that she's a devoted mother of 3 and a wife. I wanted to share with you the very interesting facts on Zambia for those who are not aware. As I said before, Zambia has 45.95 children making up its population, with a median age of 16, which is one of the lowest in the world. Zambia ratified the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child in 2008 and ratified the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child in 1991. I will now ask the technical team to get us to Nandifa's presentation, please. Enjoy.
May I say, the Honorable Lady Justice Mateka, Judge of the High Court of Kenya, the African Council Secretariat, Ms. Julianne Nduta, and Patrick, all protocol observed. Greetings from Zambia, ladies and gentlemen. The late Nelson Mandela, former president of South Africa, once said, "There can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children." The quote draws me to reflect on what society we desire for our children and how our expertise can contribute to the development of interventions that enable children experience their respective justice systems on our African continent in their best interest. The Child Justice Forum Zambia is an open-ended consortium of child justice key players in the administration of justice for children in Zambia, and it is chaired by the Judiciary of Zambia. Allow me to give a bit of background on the Child Justice Forum. In the year 2000, a justice was commissioned by the Ministry of Home Affairs in collaboration with UNICEF, Danish and Swedish embassies, and the United Kingdom Department for International Development. The overall purpose of the study was to describe the prevailing situation relating to child justice in Zambia and to analyze how children experienced the criminal justice system when they came into conflict with the law. The findings of the study included, among other things that I will mention, that many children are still arrested for petty offenses that could have been dealt with outside, that pre-trial detentions are still common, with an average period being 3 months. Children coming into conflict with the law are still being detained, with adults in prisons instead of places of safety, and children, when detained, were still not separated from adults, exposing them to a lot of vices and dangers. Emanating from that, some recommendations were made, and primary among them was the formation of the Child Justice Forum, which was initiated in the year 2001. Its aim? To provide guidance on transformation of administration of justice for children by ensuring adherence to the set minimum standards for juveniles in conflict with the law. In that regard, the Child Justice Forum was established and envisaged was an improvement in child justice administration, which could only be achieved through intersectoral cooperation at delivery level, implying that local actors come together on a regular basis and they share information, coordinate activities, and generally cooperate in order to bring about change in the criminal justice system for children. Being an open-ended network of role players, the Child Justice Forum conducts all of its activities in collaboration with its partner organizations, which include government, quasi-government organizations, as well as. The Child Justice Forum is chaired by the Judiciary, within which the Secretariat sits. At district level, the Judiciary is the chair, while the Secretariat is with the Department of Social Welfare. The Child Justice Forum activities are implemented through its subcommittees, represented by stakeholders sitting within these committees. The National Secretariat is tasked with facilitating and coordinating all of the forum's activities in line with its annual work plans. Further, each subcommittee magistrate who is designated a child-friendly court. The Child Justice Forum has 3 thematic areas of programming: the Arrest, Reception, Referral Services, commonly referred to as ARS. This thematic area aims at centralizing the arrest of children. Its aim is to limit children's exposure to the criminal justice system through an efficient intervention at the arrest and reception phase, and the expedient handling of cases so as to avoid detention of children in police cells. The approach really is that of rights-based, taking into account the best interests of a child. Diversion is also a thematic area under which the forum operates. This is the channeling away of juvenile cases from the formal criminal justice system. It is a form of restorative justice which entails promoting reconciliation, restitution, rehabilitation, and reintegration while focusing on addressing the root cause of the offending behavior. It is committed to implementing the principle of detention and institutionalization as a measure of last resort. And as such, Diversion, which was launched in 2018, is being implemented and now being rolled out to 20 additional districts. Then follows the child-friendly court, last of the thematic areas under which we operate, whose aim is to assess children holistically in a non-threatening manner and making of decisions based on the needs and circumstances of the child, balanced against the interests of justice. The child-friendly court is a specialized court which is to conduct trials of children in a manner that, among other things, reinforce their respect for human rights and fundamental freedom of others. The court takes into account the child's age and provides for their reintegration, thus playing a meaningful role in the community. The overriding principle is the best interest of the child, and it must be noted that even children who commit offenses are still children, and they need to be treated as such when they appear before the courts of law. I want to talk a bit, guys, the benefits of stakeholder collaboration, which are of great significance in service delivery of child justice administration. This has been achieved through intersectoral cooperation of institutions at district level. In that regard, there are currently established at district level 48 of what we refer to as the local child justice fora. There are several benefits here, and these are necessitated by the geographical factors and peculiarity of district jurisdiction that the actors operate within, including, among other things, information sharing, joint implementation of programming, strategic planning, and expedient case management at district level. Furthermore, the Child Justice Forum has greatly benefited from the collaboration not only at district level, but also at national level. Firstly, it has strengthened engagement amongst juvenile justice actors and improved their communication. It has also improved the quality of decisions made, thus leading to more focused outputs. It has also minimized the duplication of activities which used to split resources. And now what we are seeing is that resources that are available are maximized. It has also clearly defined the roles of respective institutions within the sector. Additionally, interventions to challenges are efficiently developed as the needs are easily identifiable. Overall, what we can say is we have seen a professional relationship among stakeholders being strengthened. Zambia has seen a story which can be told, ladies and gentlemen, on how several interventions have been achieved through stakeholder engagement and partnerships among the juvenile justice actors. Now we have child-friendly courts designated within the judiciary in all districts where subordinate courts are situated. We see the development of the National Diversion Framework that was launched in the year 2018, spearheaded by the Ministry of Community Development and Social Services, and now being rolled out to 20 districts. Notably, we have the development of the National Juvenile Justice Strategy for the years 2022 to 2026, mapping a way forward for the sector. Efforts towards the consolidating of the child legislation existing currently have been made, and we have in place a child code bill, which is yet to be presented before Parliament for its codification. We have 48 local child justice fora that have been established and facilitating for the collaboration at district level. We also have a prosecutor's handbook on cases of sexual violence that was developed and led by the National Prosecution Authority. Zambia has submitted its combined 5th to 7th periodic report to the Committee on the Rights of the Child of the UNCRC. Further, there has been a community case management developed. This was being spearheaded by the Ministry of Community Development and Social Services. There is a National Coordination Committee on Children that has been established. There is in place a development of guidelines on minimum standards for child victims and witnesses, which is being co-led by the NPA and Ministry of Gender. We have also experienced the development of the revised National Child Policy 2015, spearheaded by the Ministry of Youth, Sport and Child Development, which was made possible through the collaborative engagements of. Lastly, I will talk about the development of a curriculum on child protection for the Zambia Police Service. This was led by the Ministry of Home Affairs. It goes without saying, ladies and gentlemen, that any developing program will encounter challenges, and the Child Justice Forum is no exception. Erratic funding has been an ongoing challenge, but thankfully this has been cushioned by the support of the donor community that have partnered with the forum. However, there is need for improved budgetary allocation to the juvenile justice sector, as that is the only sustainable means towards transforming the system. In any case, the funding problem has translated to infrastructural development challenges within the sector, and that requires a lot more attention. In the most recent years, you're all aware of the COVID-19 pandemic. This has destabilized and in some cases stalled programming. However, this on the upside has taught us innovative ways of collaborating and implementing activities, and as such, electronic communication is now being relied on heavily. Ladies and gentlemen, there is nothing more than I could say to sum up why we should all be enthusiastic about jumping on board the African Council on Juvenile Justice and the benefits thereto, than to leave you with a spirited African proverb that you may all be familiar with. It states, and I quote, "If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together." Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, and have a pleasant deliberation.
I don't know about you, but I feel quite impressed about what is happening in Africa insofar as promoting access to justice for children. And sometimes, when you're working in a silo, you don't know that other people are doing great things and even greater things that you can learn from and copy from. So it's interesting to know that Zambia is doing something quite similar to, for us who know what's happening in Kenya, quite similar, but also quite so different. And so there's lots to learn about what's happening in Zambia. They've managed to actually break down this child justice forum into their smaller districts. So then there's a national level, and then now they've been able to implement that down to 48 districts at the local level. And they've managed to actually have child-friendly courts in these districts, making access to justice better for children and improving child-friendly systems. They have been able to, strengthen their engagement and implementation by even just defining the roles that the stakeholders have in service provision for children. When it comes to capacity building, we've heard that they are actually developing curriculums that can be used by the police to also improve their services to children, knowing that police are some of the first responders that deal with children's cases. So if they can, improve the kind of services that children get at the police station, it makes the whole, whatever happens in the rest of the legal system to be much easier. One of the challenges which, we always hear in the sector that we are working in is budget allocation and resource allocation. And this is why the ACJJ comes in, where we bring people together to be able to even think of new initiatives where budgets not big budgets have to be used for better implementation and improving systems, and also ensuring that whatever one organization is good at can be used. They can supplement whatever, let's say, the government is trying to do. And that's why this call was important. But even just before we go into the next session, which builds up on what Nandifa just presented, I just want to thank the Zambian team behind Nandifa and the Child Justice Forum. We know that today Zambia is currently undergoing the election, so she is not able to be here with us live. We had the option for her to join us live to just answer some questions. However, with the electioneering period, the internet is quite erratic, but we will be able to organize a separate session where you'll be able to ask the questions that you have. Insofar as what I am seeing in the chat and from the different people, I see there's someone who's watching all the way from Gaborone. Welcome, Jacqueline. We thank you. We also have comments where people are saying it's very fascinating to just hear success stories in as far as juvenile justice is concerned. And like Patrick already impressed, there are already networks within your countries that are working on improving different aspects of child rights. But why we are here today is just to improve juvenile justice service provision, not only in the context that we are working within, but also to enhance what is happening in other contexts by learning. When we spoke with Nandifa before the presentation, she talked that unlike our case here in Kenya, where we do have a children's department, they have a social welfare department. So the children's issues have been put together with other issues, like for those who are orphaned and vulnerable people within the society. So maybe those are some of the issues when it came to also having a specific act that is dealing with children's issues. That comes out as also a different perspective that country has decided to take, where the codification of child rights may be different. And that's the learning that we want to promote, where even other countries that have not yet even codified maybe their laws can actually work on improving them. And for those that don't have, can think of actually separating, like what is happening in Kenya, having specific laws that talk about juvenile justice and how to improve it. I will ask Kevin and his team, in case there are questions or maybe comments that have come up from the different social media accounts that we are having. Perhaps we can get an impression of what people are getting through. And again, we shall have another session with Nandifa where you're able to connect with her and learn more specifics about the Child Justice Forum in Zambia. Kevin, are you able to share what is happening on social media?
Hello, my name is Kevin again. So for the social media, everything is fine. We are live tweeting, and for Facebook, we are streaming live. YouTube, we are streaming live. Currently, I can see no comment, but there's just one person on Facebook who has just say hi, good. Because most of the comments I can see that in the Zoom chat already. But on social media, everything is fine.
Thank you so much. There are people asking if it's possible to get these presentations. Yes, it's easier for us to share these presentations if you join our mailing list, also by registering to be part of the African Council of Juvenile Justice, as well as even if you are still thinking about joining the African Council of Juvenile Justice, our website will be coming up, and most of these resources will be in a one-stop shop where you're able to get different resources. Also, this is a call for organizations if they'd like to provide us content to add such as research that's already been done on the different aspects that we are talking about today and the different themes that Patrick had earlier presented on, don't hesitate to talk to us. Kevin and his team will be putting the link down below of how you can request for specific content that you'd like, and we'll be able to share this with you. So I will then now get us to ask one last question on Menti, if Kevin and his team are actually ready. I hope that the participants here are now able to see how we are bringing people together to have specific conversations on juvenile justice and to learn from each other. So what is happening in Zambia and Kenya is there are also other organizations such as Lesotho that where we have the same kind of structures happening. And I don't know if Hane, it was Moke, is able to, Moko from Lesotho. I don't know if you're there and maybe you'd like to give a brief comment on basically what's happening in Lesotho. Even as Kevin and his team are getting ready. Moko? So as the technical team assists Moko, the second question we will be asking is, how do you think the ACJJ can contribute to the future of networking and collaboration? The same link will be used, menti.com, and also the same code will be used. So even as we continue with our presentations, we will be able to carry on with the presentation. So the code is 2689566. 2689566. Go to menti.com and answer the question, how do you think the ACJJ can contribute to the future of networking and collaboration? So I see the responses coming in, capacity building, which is one of the key pillars of some of the themes that we do want to work on when it comes. So more people want to have an awareness of what this ACJJ is. And if you feel like something is not clear, feel free to write to us at info@acjj.africa. I will be typing that out on the chat box so that you're able to connect with us. Partnership creations, influencing state agencies, partnerships, coordinated actions, we can pool resources. We shall be a source of information. Yes, we are working on having resources, even such as research that's been done on Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and even Burundi on restorative justice, which is also a recurring theme within the child justice sector. Thank you for those who are still typing in. Remember, you, ladies and gentlemen, for those who've just joined, you can go to menti.com and use the code 26895666 to actually share. I see a comment coming through from Frederick Musonda. Nandifa has been thanked. Madam Nandifa has been thanked for her presentation, and it's motivating the kind of work that's happening in Zambia. And he has also been able to go on a tour where he has visited children and created awareness. Thank you for that. All right, as we go on with this, I'll be asking the technical teams to assist our next panelist to get ready for her presentation. And before she goes on, I shall share a few pointers on Kenya. So as I said before, 53% of the population in the country are children. And these children are basically being governed by laws such as the Constitution of Kenya. And we also have the Children's Act, which also governs what happens with children within our context. We ratified the African Charter as Kenya. We ratified the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child in 2000. And we ratified the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child in 1990. Last year, we actually celebrated 30 years since the ratification of the UN CRC, and we are able to highlight a number of milestones, which includes the next session that we are going to be listening to in the next session. When it comes to child justice in Kenya, it's been recent reforms that have enabled the changes that we have seen within the child justice sector. And we particularly agree that the judiciary has played a major role in ensuring that these changes happened, but they've not been able to do this on their own. They have worked with even private sector actors and also worked together with other intergovernmental agencies to actually improve the kind of work that we are seeing here in Kenya. So the next presentation, even as people continue to put in their responses, will be by Honorable Lady Justice Mumbua Teresia Matheka. She's the chairperson of the National Council on the Administration of Justice, Special Task Force on Children's Matters. She's currently a judge of the High Court of Kenya at Nakuru and is a former chief magistrate at the Mombasa Law Courts. The Honorable Judge is a graduate of the University of Nairobi, the Kenya School of Law, the United Nations Asian and Far East Institute, focusing training on treatment of juvenile delinquency, and holds a Master's of Law degree in Women's Law from the University of Zimbabwe, Southern and Eastern Regional Center for Women's Law. She joined the bar in 1990, just when we were actually ratifying the UNCRC. So she is the best placed person to actually give us the journey of what Kenya has gone through in those in the period of time since the ratification. She has served in various capacities and also served at the Judiciary Training Institute, and has also been at the forefront of the development of curriculums such as those for the Judiciary, Department of Children's Services, Police, Probation, Aftercare, on basically child care and child rights. She was instrumental in implementing Kenya's Women's Judges Association's pilot project on court users committees and the implementation of the Sexual Offences Act, the Children's Act, and issues related to gender-based violence. The Honorable Judge, in recognizing the need for collaboration amongst agencies, child justice agencies, set up the first child protection team under the Children's Act, comprising of actors within the child justice system, and they worked, which are also known as CCUCs, Children Court User Committees, which have enabled them to achieve a functional child justice system, which includes the court, police, prisons, probation, aftercare, and amongst others, which system has been replicated across Kenya. The Honorable Judge is also a committed member of the Kenya Magistrates and Judges Association, and she's committed to reforming the child justice system through empowering children, training those who work with children, and also developing the jurisprudence that entrenches best practice into the child justice system. Karibu, Honorable Matheka. And as you say, child rights are each person's responsibility because haki ya mtoto in Swahili ni jukumu letu sote. Karibu.
Thank you very much, Julia, for very, very kind words. At some point, I was blushing. Good morning, everyone. And I want to recognize my co-panelist or speaker. I'm trying to get the name so that I can remember it. But the lady from Zambia. Nandifa, yes. Madam Nandifa, thank you for a really wonderful presentation. Just showing how Zambia has taken a child justice to the next level. I just want to start by thanking all of you for this really great opportunity to share what we are doing as a country, and especially as a judiciary on issues of child justice and how it is necessary for us to work together in order to achieve what is best for the child in this country. You said something about something I did, and I'd like to just give a little story that in the year, at the time when I was appointed as a children's magistrate and I was transferred to Nakuru, I found that was in the year 2002, I think, around there, 2002, 2003, we had just started using our Children's Act. And one of the challenges was that those days, unlike now where we have the internet and everything is available, you had to have a hard copy of every legislation, of every statute that you are to rely on. And I found myself implementing a new law, which other parties did not have, especially the police. They didn't have the Children's Act. Some did, but not everyone. And it was really difficult to hold people to something that they did not have. And I found that the only way, actually, I realized at that moment that there was no way I was going to work by myself. And that's how that child protection team was born, because I had to get everyone on board, all the people who were involved, the children department, probation, police, prisons, not prisons, at that time the remand homes were with the Department of Children Services, the children, the CCIs, so that would be the LSK, so that would be able to sit together and see how to implement this law that we all were bound by, and which had in its own way made us all equal, because it made the child the center of every activity we did under the Children's Act. So that is, I guess, how I ended up really getting involved in all these things. So for today, I want to speak about the Special Task Force on Children Matters. If we can move on to the next slide, and kindly just, if you can use the, what do you call that icon there, slideshow so that they don't all show up on the left corner. You can just use the slideshow. It's the icon that's the slideshow up there. It's there. It's up there. I think it gives, yeah. So we'll be speaking about the National Council, the Special Task Force, highlights of the work it has done, and maybe just one or two challenges that we have met. You can move to the next slide. As you may be aware, the NCAJ is coming to its 10th year, so we'll be having celebrations this year. Next slide, please. On the 10 years of the NCAJ, and it's not in this presentation, but we as a task force will be participating in celebrating the 10 years of the NCAJ and what it has done. And one of the highlights will be this task force. The NCAJ was established under the Judicial Service Act, and it is a high-level policy-making, implementation, and oversight coordination mechanism composed of non-state and state actors from the justice sector, and it is chaired by the Honorable the Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya. The other members, of course, include the national leaders, the Attorney General, the ODPP, the Director of Children's Services, all those members, persons who sit up there in the justice sector. It has one major mandate, which is to ensure a coordinated, efficient, effective, and consultative approach in the administration of justice and reform of the justice sector. How the task force comes in is because the NCAJ performs its functions through various committees, working groups, and task forces. Those of you who are familiar with it, you'll remember the bail and bond task force, you remember the one on criminal justice reform. They are all part of the work that is being done by this. The task force was gazetted in January 2016 and given 16 TORs. You'll see them all there. So you can just see that there was a big challenge for a task force to have so many, TORs. It means there was something that was missing with regard to children. If you see just the first one, to review and report on the status of children in the administration of justice, the main focus was children who enter the justice system. And the related issue, the policy and legal regimes, the service standards for children who enter the justice system, and whether there were any existing with regard to the institutions that handle children, rules of procedure for enforcement of fundamental rights of children. One may say, okay, we have the Mutunga rules, as we call them in Kenya, but we also have in the Children's Act a provision for enforcing the rights of children, but rules where specific issues related to children would be enforced. The infrastructure and equipment in the criminal justice system with regard to children. You can think about all the things, the institutions themselves, the cells, the courts, the offices, children officers' offices and probation offices where, matters related to children will be dealt with, where children are interviewed, all those institutions and infrastructure that relate to children, the status of those institutions, and whether they are monitored or supervised by anybody or inspected, Then there was something we started as a country, the child protection units. If you recall, the Kenyans on board, that at police stations, you'd find that children would be held together with adults because we did not have a specific provision for where children would be held if they were arrested or when they were arrested. And there came a time when there was need to have separate specific places to hold children. And the idea of child protection units was born, but there were no guidelines, and how they would function. So the issue of establishing these more in more areas and having proper guidelines on how they would function. Then we have a Children's Act that is really good as it is for now, although we are doing a new one, but implementing it without practice directions for courts, guidelines for courts and other persons who deal with children, that was found to be something that we needed. And then there's the issue of diversion. Children need not enter the justice system. And if they do, they need not necessarily have to go through the whole process. So the issue of diversion of children who find themselves in contact or in conflict with the law. Then, of course, that the fact that for people to handle children, there must be a certain professional training that is available to them, because we should be aware that in the juvenile justice system, as it is now, people will be employed, be given the jobs to do, whether it's the magistrate or the police officer or the children officer or the probation officer or the prison officer, if they, but is there a specific professional training, skills, knowledge, set that is required for this person? That was something that needed to be looked into. And then children of imprisoned mothers, we know what that means, that when a mother is imprisoned and they have to go to prison with their child, that child is not provided for in our justice system. Despite the fact that the Children's Act and Article 119 recognizes that a child in need of care and protection, a child who is imprisoned with a mother is a child in need of care and protection, nothing was in place for these children. The mother will be arrested, they'll process, and she will just walk to prison with a child, and for the prison to go and deal with that child. But policy and other directions on what to do with these children. And of course, that means if the mother is in prison, even the children who are left at home are children of an imprisoned mother. So what happens? And then, of course, the issue of separated cells, I've talked about that. And children with special needs. We know that children with special needs also enter the justice system. Children who might have mental issues, children who might have certain disabilities, they get into the justice system. But what is there in the justice system to take care of these children? Guidelines for the actors who deal with these children. And then, of course, the issue of coordination among all the agencies. And remember, in our country, we have a devolved system of government where we have functions for the national government and functions for the county government. How this would coordinate to be able to ensure that the child who enters the justice system actually gets the best that is expected for them. Next slide, please. Now, the task force is made up of all these persons, as you can see, rather agencies. It is chaired by the judiciary, and as the current task force, the deputy chair or the vice chair was from the National Police, and the Department of Children's Services provided the secretariat. As we are now, things are evolving, and we also have the NCAJ secretariat being part and parcel of that secretariat. So you can see all this. This is a replication actually of how the NCAJ looks like, in that you also find the non-state agencies in it. Next, please. Next slide. Now, I've talked about the one before that. I've talked about, I've tried to explain the TORs and what they were trying to address, but just briefly, you can see some of the gaps. For example, in reality, that there would be a backlog of cases, and that means that justice is denied for children. A child could enter the system when they were still a child, and by the time the case is concluded, they're already an adult, creating a serious problem on how to deal with them. Children held in institutions beyond their childhood, quality of care wanting in the different institutions, gaps in legislation and policy, the issue of knowledge, skill, and attitude gaps among the child justice sector, data sharing, and legal aid. Next slide, please. Next slide. Of course, the issue of collaboration, inadequate referral systems among agencies, involvement of family and the community, and the limited visibility and accessibility of the justice system for children. You'd find that maybe you are aware of how maybe the justice system functions, but when it comes to children, it would not be clear. It would not be like as visible as it is for the usual the criminal justice system. So that one of the gaps that was there. Next, please. So how did the task force do its work? As I said, there were 16 TORs, and there was need to actually come up with a work plan to be able to now, break this into deliverables, And what happened is that the TORs were grouped into 3 thematic areas, so that there would be 3 working committees, one looking at legislation and policy reforms, the other quality of care, infrastructure and data, and then the other one will be looking at the issues of coordination, sensitization, and M&E. And this work would be carried out through meetings, retreats, circuit visits, where the task force would visit courts and other institutions and related institutions, meetings with court users committees and children court user committees, and engaging stakeholders and holding barazas where members of the public would be present, and also trainings of the stakeholders. In summary, we have a report, then the task force report that was launched after the task force completed its initial report, and that report is available online. But generally, the task force would report on the status of children, provide guidance to key actors in the administration of justice by drafting essential guidelines. I will come to that further down in the presentation, and also come up with a strategy for improving coordination of the child justice actors. Next slide. So the legislation policy guidelines committee had to do the what is in that slide, but basically it's look at the gaps in legislation and policy and guidelines for all the actors in the child justice sector, and develop those guidelines, point out the gaps, and develop some of the policies that would be required. For example, the diversion regulations, policy guidelines for the child protection units, draft rules for enforcement of children's rights, and also look at case law and see how that come up with a list with the cases on the existing jurisprudence on children issues. Next slide. Then the other committee on quality of care, data, and infrastructure was also to look at the service standards of each of the child justice sector institutions, conduct a sit-down on the existing infrastructure in the child justice system, develop guidelines for the monitoring, supervision, and inspection of those institutions and facilities, and the mechanisms for establishment of the CPUs, and also minimum standards of the infrastructure for child holding facilities. Next slide. The next one was on the coordination and sensitization, and this had very specific mandates as well. I developed the policy on mandatory continuous professional development on that is for the training of persons who handle children, and then also look at a curriculum that could be common among all these persons. And then, of course, coordination of the actors, both at the national and county level. And running through the 3 committees was that each of them would also review and report on the status of children in the administration of justice, so that as they looked at as each committee looked at each of its own TORs, but it also had to look at the status of children in that, within their mandate as those committees. Just the slide before that, please. Yes. So as I was just saying that if you look at each of the three committees, there was that running requirement that as you look at your area, remember to also look, if you're looking at coordination, what is the status of children in the administration of justice as these persons are coordinating their activities? If you're looking at quality of care, again, what is the status of children in that area? If you're looking at legislation, what is the status of children? Because that will form the basic, it's the main thing, despite looking at different aspects of the TORs, but the running thread would be what is the status of the children within that area as it relates to the administration of justice. Okay, next one. So out of this, I think as the task force was going around, because these benefits were the initial actual benefits as the task force was going around. Remember, one of the things that we know is that children matters, or a child cannot wait. If you find a children's case is delayed and you have a way of ensuring it moves, then you ensure it moves. If you find a child needs rescue, you will not say, let me go and come and rescue the child tomorrow. Anything could have happened to that child as you go and come tomorrow. So what happened is that as the task force was going around the country, looking at, trying to carry out its TOR, certain things began to happen. Because as the task force was just doing its work, certain things began to evolve, to come out of just doing its going around trying to implement or carry out the work of the task force. And one thing that came out clearly, because the members would go together or in different teams, you could see that enhanced coordination among the members of the task force, because you break down those barriers. We are here with a judge, but no, as we are working together, she's a member of the task force. We are here with the police. We are all members of the task force. And what has brought us together is the child. So one of the things, as I pointed out earlier, there was the issue of backlog. It was realized that one way to reduce backlog would be to have service weeks. If you recall, the Kenyans in the house, that at the time when we had the new constitution and the former Chief Justice Mutunga, there were service weeks to deal with the backlog of cases in this country. An audit was done, but one of the gaps we had noticed was that the children cases were not specifically provided for. And we asked, and that mandate was given that children courts, as much as we have only 2 designated children courts, there are magistrates dealing with children matters throughout the country. So the courts were mandated to do what we're calling services, to go and pull out cases for children matters and do something like an RRI, work on them within a week and see what you can deal with. So there's no way the courts would work by themselves to reduce the backlog. They would have to have the prosecutor, the children officer, the probation officer, the police themselves, the investigators, witnesses being bonded, even co-opting people like counselors to come and speak to the children if they were victims, to see how they'll be able to, just assist them. So we found, that as we worked along, this was necessary and it was done. To be able to do the service weeks, they needed to have visits to those stations, work with the court users committee. If they did not have a children court users committee, launch a children court users committee so that committee would coordinate the service week. So that meant there was some initial capacity building of these officers so that they would be aware, when we do a service week, what do we need to do? How do we deal with this so that we don't also re-traumatize the victims, or, and how do we work together to do these things together and have an effective service week? Visiting the institutions, the holding facilities, and pointing out the gaps in the handling of children in those institutions, and reporting to the, not really reporting because they would be with us. The officers dealing with those matters would be with us in those visits. Just pointing out that this is missing. You go to a remand home and you find that the way children are being treated is not the right way. We'll be able to point out And the best thing would be that instant action would be taken to try and deal with that particular issue. So we found that helped. You go to a police station, maybe there is no holding facility for children, advice on how they should do it, even if they don't have. During service weeks, bringing together every available advocate who could give pro bono services, so that legal aid. And you see, sometimes when we left those stations, that would continue, that practice would continue. So all I'm saying is that there were certain immediate benefits. For example, we had to come up with a form to ensure children who were just in contact with the law were not brought to court with charge sheets. Police, in the police procedures, they have a charge sheet they bring you to court with. But children who are in need of care and protection, who are lost, who find themselves at the police station for one reason or the other, there was nothing, a separate form to bring them with. So coming up with such a form, taking it through the task force members and validating it and saying we can actually use this form to bring children to court. We were able to identify hotspots where there is backlog and what is the problem? How can we deal with it? And putting the CUCs, the stakeholders together to look at what is it that makes you have backlog of children cases. In places where CPUs had been closed at police stations, we were able to see that these were done. Then the issue of ADR in children matters, because it was not just children cases of children in conflict with the law, but even all cases relating to children, made by maintenance, children in need of care and protection, the criminal cases, all these cases would be addressed. So applying the ADR, mediation, plea bargain where it was possible, and getting those cases moving, that was done. And introducing those practices in those courts made sure that a seed was planted, and some of them continued with those practices. So there were those initial benefits for children and in child-related matters as the task force went round. Next. And as even we go to the next one, we found that like children courts have, in every court station, of course, a budget is always done, which is part of the budget for the judiciary. But we found that children courts, have very specific needs. Where the children, a designated children court is, that is not difficult. But where there's just a magistrate handling children matters, there is no difference between that and where there's a designated children's court. So we recommended to them that, you see, you need to actually have your specific needs for your court as a children's court factored in the budget, so that if one day somebody sees the need for that, they will be able to provide that money, so that any children's court in this country has a specific budget because of the special needs that a children's court has. So the visits, as you can see them there, and one time we even went somewhere and found that the land for the institution had been grabbed. Somebody had kind of fenced off part of the land of the institution. And you see, that is something that coming there as a task force and finding that it gets to the authorities, and the authorities are on their feet to deal with that. We saw a challenge where children coming from the institutions and going to court, sometimes they would not have a meal. Maybe the kids will they'll go past lunchtime and there's nothing for them to eat. So that the recommendation was made, and it was actually put in place for children leaving the institutions, going to court, to have a packed lunch, so that if they stayed for slightly past lunchtime, they would have something to eat. But the issue was making sure magistrates who are dealing with these matters give them first priority, so they can leave and go back where they came from in good time. Next, please. So out of this work, of course, as I said, we have a report. I think we'll share where you can find it online. But documents were developed. The major one was the report, status report on children in the justice system in Kenya. That is the document I'm talking about. But as you can see, we developed all these other documents, and they're waiting to be implemented. Some of these things waiting to be implemented. Of course, we are already There's already, some of these are being piloted already. Training for persons who deal with children, the curriculum is already in place, the training manuals and all those that are there. The policies in place waiting to be adopted by the NCAJ. We already have in place the JJIMS, which is being piloted as well. You know, some research reports have been done, which will maybe go way into helping us to see how to effectively put magistrates in courts that deal with children matters. The issue of children with special needs, all these things are already in place. And as you can see, if we implement these, then we are towards ensuring that we have serious policy reform in this sector. Next, please. Well, you are aware we are waiting for the new Children's Act, and one of the greatest activity of the task force was to work together with the NCSS. I always find it hard to say all those letters together, but the National Council on Children's Matters, which is in the Children's Act. I have to acknowledge that this is another, it's another, how do I say, it's another body that is almost like the task force. This one is within the Children's Act, Section 30. If you go to Section 30 of our Children's Act, it's also a coordinating body that is mandated to do certain things, but majorly on child welfare and child rights. And if you go there, you'll find the membership is almost similar to that of NCAJ, but its mandate is is a bit different. But at the end of the day, it's the child who brings them together. Basically, for them, it's policy and other issues. If you look at the act, you'll see that. But working together to push for the Children's Act. Then, of course, one of the things about any statute or any legislation is that it has to be implemented and there's need for money. So one of the things the task force did is coordinate the issue of different members of the task force coming up with budget proposals for the implementation of the new bill or the new law when it's passed, so that we are aware. Because if it's not provided for, then it will not happen. Like the Children's Act we have now, it has very good things, but money was not, factored. There was no budget set aside for those things. For example, just to give you an example, like legal aid, for a long time, there was no money for legal aid for children. Issue of psychological and those kind of that psychosocial support. It says there that money will be, if you send a child for that, money will be paid for it to be provided for. But there is no budget for that. So for the new bill, we thought it's good for us to actually have the different persons who will implement this law come up with a proposal of the budget that they will need to do that. Then, of course, regulations and rules to accompany the bill. I think that was one thing that was not done with the Children's Act. That's why we don't have a Children Procedure Code or something like that to help us implement the Children's Act. And then, of course, we have participated as a task force in the development of documents for the ODPP with regard to prosecution of child-related matters. Then you are aware now with the CCUCs, these barriers that happen, the bureaucracy and all those things are broken, because when people work together, then you find things move faster for children. The most important thing for me is that the agencies that deal with children are able to bring the best interest of the child at the core, so that when it's a police officer dealing with a child, they may have other jobs, but when the child comes along, they know that I have to put the best interest of the child at the forefront, or the judicial officer. And then with training, of course, you get persons who are skilled, who are knowledgeable, with the right attitude dealing with children. Next, please. Then like I said earlier, we already have some documents that require to be gazetted. These, as I said earlier, I think I gave they actually at the point of where they'll become part and parcel of our act, but they are already being used because members have validated them, at least in terms of just assisting us to be effective and efficient in how we work. Next. Next, please. The other beautiful thing about the work of the service weeks to deal with children cases, let me say this. It started as a service week just to deal with a backlog, but I can tell you that it achieved much, much more than that. As I said, that is a time, and the judiciary actually nominated the month of November to be the Children Month, Children's Service Month, if I can say that, a time when practitioners come together, not only to clear backlog, but actually, from what one of the effects of this was that practitioners are able to take stock. If say a court is doing a service week, there's no way it's not going to sit together and see why are we having backlog? Why are children staying longer in the remand home? Why are we not getting reports, CORs, in good time, or PORs or bill reports? Why are we not getting them in time? Why are children not being escorted to institutions in good time? You are able to look at those because that goes to determine that a matter is either delaying, and if people come together, they're able to do that. And then the pre-training of the CUC, the pre-visits, those meetings with the task force members, being able to get feedback, issues that go back to the NCAJ, and that's where the main policymakers sit. That way, the service weeks have become much, much more than that. Than just a time to clear backlog. So that's one of the greatest benefits, I think, to the child justice system. Next, please. And out of this, the whole of that, everything that the task force has done, as I said, we have now that juvenile justice information management system that is being piloted now, because as you know, the data about a child offender is really sensitive. It is not, because at the end of the day, there's no conviction and there ought to be no record. But how do you maintain this data in such a way that for the benefit of the child, collect it, maintain it, and share it along the way, because we know we are a chain. The justice system is a chain. So how do we ensure that every time the child moves through, the other person knows what the child has been through, so that they are able to give them what is best at the next stop? So this is something that we hope can take off completely. There is already, it's already been presented to the NCAJ so that it can be, adopted for use throughout the country. Next. And the outcome, one of the outcomes is to see if we can have a justice for children strategy for the nation, because the task force has done what it has done. In our report, we have seen what the gaps are, how they need to be filled, and that we can do that if we all work together. Because at the end of the day, we are only working for one person, that child who passes through our hands. So this is identified as a means to bring together all the juvenile justice agencies or the child justice agencies, plus their strategies, so that we can see where the gaps are. Where is it that the child keeps falling through, despite the fact as having all these good things? And then we'll be able to see if we can have one that brings us together. Next, please. Next, yeah. Just a few pictorials to feel good with, to show you maybe some pictures from Milimani Law Courts when they did their service week. You can see the flyer there. And what they had planned to do. Next, please. You can always enjoy that later. It was one, but there were several. Then Makadara, meeting with the CCUC, and what happened is there was a meeting to just discuss in their jurisdiction, the jurisdiction of that court, to discuss how do we deal with children who are involved with crime in our jurisdiction. So you can see that you end up in mashinani, by working together, collaborating together, you actually end up on the ground being able to talk to your actual customer, let me use clients, speaking with them and hearing what they need and how to address their issues in reality, not in theory, in reality. Next, please. Yes, we recognize the task force that even the Cadiz court deal with children matters to do with children, so they are part and parcel of us, and we have discussions with them, and so that we can all be efficient and effective and deal with children in the right way. Our judge there speaking to children, it is also one of the things that the task force really does. If you go out of your way and meet the people who have the issues, and they tell you how they want to be assisted, how they want issues to be addressed, so that you can look at them and see how the recommendations to make. And this kind of visits where we met them actually were very, very useful. Meeting even with Nyumba Kumi, meeting the chiefs, people in barazas, and the people tell you, judges, munafanya hivi, judges, you are doing this, the police, you are doing this, the children officer, and you see when you hear it from them, we need to go back and improve on some of the things that we are doing on the ground. And as a task force, because we represent everyone else, those things can trickle down now to where the problem is, and it is solved properly. Next, please. Well, I can't stop talking about benefits. As we said earlier, we always say, I think where we all come from, that the village would raise the child. At least as when you are growing up, you are not just your mother's child. The elders in the village would deal with you if you did something wrong, and also give you advice if you needed it. That village has broken down, so it is us who are in the justice system, the child justice system in particular, who can help to raise children. We are given that mandate. When they come before us and they've done, broken the law, or they're in trouble with the law in one way or the other, or they're in contact with the law because we, the adults in the room, have done something wrong. For example, maybe two parents are fighting and the child falls through the cracks and ends up with no home, or we need to provide for their, upkeep in the courts, in the courts when it comes to maintenance, and have their education taken care of by parents who are fighting. All those, we have become that village, and we have to carry that mandate, together and be accountable, because sometimes the courts end up being the parents of some of the children. And the other stakeholders as well, because a child will appear in court, they need a place to stay, the children officer will be called, they have broken the law, they need to be rehabilitated, the probation officer will be asked to make a recommendation for where they should go, they'll end up in somebody's hands in the institution. So we have just ended up being that village that will raise the child who ends up in our system, and therefore being bound by the Constitution and other related statutes, and in particular Article 53 and the Children's Act. Those give us a guidance. And as we've seen, the court users committees are throughout the country. You'll find a court users committee. If they don't have a children CUC, at least they'll have something in the court users committee that talks about children. But as a task force, we tried to at least launch a children court users committee in every court that we went to. And that is the ideal situation. There has to be a children court CUC in every court, because that is the only way that children matters can be dealt with, because they on their own, they are very diverse. when the CUC sits to discuss the issue of justice within the whole county, for example, or the whole district, for example, it becomes difficult to focus on the child. So the CCUC's role is to focus on the child and the issues that are related to the child in the justice system. Then through the task force, it is very clear that no justice actor can work on their own. You know, as much as we all have specific mandates under our different statutes, you can't work on your own when handling a child. If you do that, then you harm that child, you cause harm to that child. You must be able to collaborate with the next person so that this child is given what the law provides for that child. Working together creates an accountability system, an accounting system where the child has been arrested by the police and brought to court. What did they do with the child? The court has to know. Well, when you were there, what happened? Did they follow the rules? So if the officer is properly aware of his role, he will have done the right thing. Then the magistrate, if you don't do the right thing, the children officer will find out, or the counselor will be able to say that when that child went to that court, they were traumatized by that judicial officer. You see, if they end up in an institution, you know, what happens to that child? Somebody else in the system will find out, because it's a circular thing. You know, you pass through here and you must end up, you know, in the community at the end of the day. So being aware that we hold each other accountable. And then through this working together, we are able to train one another. And one of the things that that curriculum provides for is that trainings for persons who handle children should not be done separately. You have your own training for police, for magistrates, for children officers, for probation officers, for prison officers. You can, those are okay. But when it comes to the issues of children in the justice system, there is a need. The task force made a very strong recommendation, and the curriculum that they have in place is where you bring all those people in one classroom. Because what brings them together is the child, so that when they're in that classroom, they discuss how, if it's the police act, you know, the children's act, the prisons act, how does that, you know, affect the child? How do we deal with the child in such a way that we have the same standard when the child passes through our hands? So that training together to empower them to be able to deal with their roles properly. And then, of course, sharing experience, sharing knowledge, sharing, you know, changing attitudes, and coming up together with the policy and guidelines that help us to work together for children. Next slide, please. We can't miss challenges. The COVID pandemic was the biggest challenge, even for the task force. We did not have proper service weeks for 2 years. I think this year we hope to get to do something. Some courts tried. When the pandemic hit, the task force came together, and different members of the task force, the Department of Children Services, prisons, judiciary, tried to, you know, reduce the number of children in the institutions, because when the discussions were held, it was clear that children who were in institutions who needed to come to court were actually suffering. You know, you can imagine, you cannot be visited there because of COVID. Your parents cannot come. The institution is not enabled to you know, make phone calls to your parent. Your parent cannot call and speak to you. There was a very concerted effort to ensure that children who could leave the institutions left, and that who did not need to come into the institution did not come into the institutions. Even those who did not need to come into the justice system, that was done, and we hope that we can continue that, so that we really continue making sure that those who, you know, only those who must end up in the institutions. There's another challenge about money. Money is always an issue. Budgets to do things. You know, you need infrastructure, you need, like during the pandemic, some institutions got computers, they got internet, you know, people offered to support them. But we need to, you know, have that, structured somewhere in our own national budget, so that we don't have to panic when these things happen. Of course, there's the issue of devolution and the issue of child offenders and the county governments, how to put them together so that we can work together. So that coordination, I know some work is going on, of course. It's not that we are just sitting there, but some work is ongoing on how we can coordinate so that when it comes to reintegration and of children, that we can involve the county governments. Budget money, of course, the task force has had a lot of support from partners and donors, so that has made its work, all its work, made it possible for the task force to do a lot of work. Here, I've only given, I think, the tip of the if I can use that word, just a bit of what has been done. Most of it will be seen in that report. The report has what we call our big 7 agenda, but they are much, that 7 agenda has been broken down into an implementation matrix. And as soon as it is adopted, we will be able to carry out a lot of work for children in this country. I couldn't put that one out here, but I can tell you that there is a lot that is going to be done, and I'm certain that we'll be able to achieve more, of course, with the support of every stakeholder, because as you've seen from the membership, we have all everybody on board. Next, please. Yes, and there we are. As Julian said, as we began, haki ya mtoto ni jukumu letu sote. We say that for the child to get their rights, for the child's welfare to be taken care of, each one of us has to do their mandate, but we cannot do it alone. We must do it together. Thank you very much, and I wish you all the best as we continue. Asante sana.
These are the times I wish we were in person and we stand up to give you a standing ovation. So thank you so much for that presentation. Just to echo the other sentiments in the room, I see a comment here from Peter Kabuagi, who says that he thanks you, Ladies Justice Teresia Mateka, for the good presentation. God bless you for serving the children meticulously. We also have Anastasia, who says that the presentation is very informative and thanks you very much. And we have we also have I think she's called Honorable Lucy Gitari, I think I saw, yes. She said, very good presentation, my sister. Keep giving a summary of the work of the task force. Well done. So you have represented your bench members really well. So even Josephat all the way from Zambia has also thanked you for your in-depth presentation. And ladies and gentlemen, for those who some are logging in now as well, I just want to quickly summarize what Lady Mateka has said. But the most important thing is just to emphasize that she has said that no justice actor can work on their own. And so through the concerted efforts of this task force, which is basically a national task force focusing on children's matters, their focus has been children for the past for the last decade, from what I understood, which means from the promulgation of the new constitution, it's no longer new, from the promulgation of the Constitution of Kenya, we have seen a number of reforms, and this task force, and especially on children's matters, has put children's matters at the forefront. So there has been an improvement in infrastructure and equipment in the child justice system, such as the improvement of, let's say, the child protection units in the police station, and also having children courts within the court systems in Kenya. They've also enlightened and capacity built those who handle children, who should have a professional background, should have the necessary skills and trainings and knowledge to continue in this work. They have managed to coordinate both state and non-state actors. They've been able to understand the status of children in all relevant areas in order to better administer justice now that the judiciary is the lead. You know, a lot we've seen when it came to coordination, people were talking about backlog of cases. So in a bid to reduce the backlog of cases, they have had specific service weeks in different courts. I remember I attended one in Ngong, in the Ngong law courts, where cases of children were being dealt with. And in 1 week, you would be surprised how many cases they go through. By then, even issues like diversion would be addressed, even plea bargaining. So there's in a bit to reduce backlog, even other new innovative measures in the juvenile justice administration has been happening, as well as applying ADR, just like I've mentioned before. They've realized that children courts have very specific needs that require budget and funding and allocation. And of course, again, budget allocation has been an overarching theme, which possibly should have its own conversation as a theme, because now even with COVID, organizations are saying they don't have the budget. The governments are also saying that budgets are quite constrained. So as a sector, what are these initiatives we can come up with to ensure that there's a proper administration of justice? It actually breaks my heart when you talk about the children who are institutions who could not have any kind of contact, the real social distancing. As much as in COVID, we are talking about physical distancing, you can imagine now social distancing. Some of us were with our family and friends and were not able to, and we were not able to meet them. Now, can you imagine a child within an institution who can't even maybe get a simple phone call to be able to talk to their parents? But the beauty of the COVID situation is that we've had to be innovative, just as Justice Matheka has said, and we've had to use initiatives such as ADR and diversion just to ensure that cases that do not need to go through the justice system do not have to be had in court. And so I just want to thank you a lot for that. And I just feel that the NCAJ as well can, on the challenge of devolution and having administration of justice being devolved closer to the ground, perhaps we can learn something from Zambia that talks about 48 districts and having the Child Justice Forum in those areas. Perhaps we can learn something from them, and that's where the ACJJ comes in. And so now, before we go to the last session of this call, and because we have around 15 minutes, I would ask if you could give us at least 10 more minutes where I can allow for you, our participants, to ask questions. So one of the questions I will, which can be asked to both the two presenters that are currently here, that is Patrick on the ACJJ and Honorable Lady Justice Matheka. We will be able to, I'll ask you to raise your hand, and Kevin and his team can possibly assist me to have questions come. If you're not able to raise your hand, please write in the question and answer section, and someone from the team will be able to respond to your question. So the first question, perhaps Lady Matheka, I can ask you is, I don't know if you're there.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. I just needed to confirm. I've missed seeing your beautiful face. Thank you. So my first question, based on what has been presented here, is what do you think are some of the challenges insofar as working with both state and non-state actors? What do you think the challenge has been in having state and non-state actors working together? And I'll ask the second question, which comes from one of the participants in the room. Her name her name was Anastasia, I believe, and she asked, what is the role? She saw the composition of the NCAJ and saw that the NCCK, which is the National Council on the Churches of Kenya, is missing there. And a number of the charitable institutions for children are actually run by faith-based organizations. So what is the role that they have had in in juvenile justice, considering that they seem to be missing from that structure? I think I'll allow you to answer those two questions as I gather more questions from the participants. Please raise your hands and I shall be getting to you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for those very challenging questions. What is the challenge working with the non-state agencies? Well, let me just start by saying that non-state agencies bring something into, government has a way of doing its work. We are bound by certain rules and regulations on how we must do our things. And one of maybe the challenges I would say is that when you have non-state agencies also have their way of doing things. They may want you to carry out a certain activity, but you may not be able to do it until you have a certain permission from somewhere, because you can't just go and do it. They may have their, how do I say? I think they may have their, what do you call their plans? They have their plans, they have their programs, they have all those things that they want to do. And maybe there's a way you want to do your things as government. So you find maybe you may have that, you must have to sit down and say, okay, we want to do it this way. You have planned to do it this way. We must bring back our heads together and see where we are going to meet. Because a lot of times when you are doing your programs as an state agency, you are not doing it with us. You're not doing it with government. You are doing it by yourself. You've gone out, you've seen where the need is, where the challenge is, where you need to intervene, okay? And then government is doing, say, like the task force has gone out, they've seen what needs to be done, but the way to do it, sometimes I would say maybe some of those times there may be that challenge of, can we sit down? Maybe not a challenge really, but sit down and see, we want to go to do it this way, and you have planned to do it this way, we find a way of doing it together. But I would say that as a task force, we have been able to do that very well, to be able to break down our work plans in such a way that the non-state agencies that we have had on board are able to see where they fit in, so that we don't have to say we are going to fit into your program, but where you fit in, so that we work together. So usually there'll be a challenge where maybe you have something and you want the other organization to fit in. That can create a challenge. But otherwise, we've worked very well. Like I said, without the non-state agencies, maybe we would not have done as much as we did because of the funding, because we were able to work together. Now, the other issue is the question of the NCCK and faith-based organizations and the institutions that they run. You see, well, maybe it was an omission, but one of the things people we have on board is in the Department of Children's Services. They are the ones who, let me say, who license, who supervise, who inspect, who work on those organizations. And mostly you'll find that in the juvenile justice sector, when it comes to child offenders or children who fall into the justice system, it's mostly victims who may end up in those organizations. So there could have been an omission, because child offenders will not go into a children's home. They will go to the other ones. So there may have been an omission because usually it is the victims who go there. But it's something that can be dealt with, because as we move forward with the task force on implementing what it has to do, what its recommendation, there is no way you can miss out, because we know victims of offenses, especially children, really get rescued into these institutions, and they need psychosocial support. It comes from a lot of them. So there may have been an omission, maybe because there was maybe a lot of citing on the children who enter into the justice system without necessarily saying the victims, but we know that it was not, like out of something else, but basically just that. But like I said, what I know for sure is that there's no way we can move forward without them. And the DCS has, I think I would say they have represented them well so far. Thank you. I hope I've answered you. And I'm sure there are members of the task force here, especially Justice Gitari. I've seen, and maybe there are others, if they could chip in on whether there are other challenges. And maybe there are also members of the non-state agencies who are here, who are members of the task force. If they are, please feel free to chip in. If you have something to say, you can write in the chat box or put up your hand and help us make this discussion enriching enough for everyone else with regard to those two questions. So they can write, I'm just saying they are free to also say, give their views. There's nothing to stop them from giving their views. That's how we work. Anyone with any such views can put them in the chat box. Thank you.
Okay, and Honorable Mateka, there's someone here, Moses Otieno, who says, thank you, Honorable Mateka. CCPO training empowered many of us. I think that's a beneficiary. Other people who are saying thank you for your presentation. But even as I wait for more questions coming from the panelists, I wanted to ask, do you think that the relatively low implementation of laws and policies have had a lot to do with the lack of collaboration amongst different stakeholders?
For me, that one is a yes, because if we don't work together, we can't go very far. That is a fact. And the moment we get together is when things move. So for me, that is my personal experience, that when you try to do things alone, you actually drag yourself. Like, I'll give you an example, very specific example. The issue of, say, transporting the child who has been found guilty of an offense to certain institutions will require a police officer to escort that child to that institution. But you find there's no provision for funding for that officer to move from that point to the next point. Say from I don't know, Western Province to the one in Coast is Shimolatewa. The kid has been committed, so they have to wait until money is found and the kid is at the police station to go. But when there is collaboration, you find that the department with money that time for such activities will just make provision, because it's the same thing you are doing. You have some money for this, you say, okay, the police don't have money today, we still have some money in our kit, it's a government activity, provide for this person to go. And you find within no time the kid has been taken. But when it's left to the people, their budget is finished, the money for such activities is finished in their budget for that term, they don't have money, what do? And the kid is there and they need to be taken to somewhere else, you see. So it's very practical little things that make it difficult for kids. So when we work together, things move.
We can bridge all the gaps that may be identified.
Yeah.
My next question is, considering you've talked about COVID and the issues that came up with that, how has technology and the fact that we have all been forced, even with this webinar, to harness the power of technology, how has technology played a role in improving collaboration and partnerships within the juvenile justice system? And this is not just necessarily about the NCAJ, but overall.
Yeah. So how has technology in collaboration? Let me give you just one example. When we were discussing how to go forward with handling the challenge that COVID brought to juvenile justice, actually we had so many people on board. Just the fact that we could reach one another, because we could not meet. You can't meet physically, you can't do, but just reaching out and meeting this way and discussing those challenges and finding solutions together, ourselves with partners, and being able to reach out. I think that for me is what happened. And of course, getting assistance. When you reach out and getting assistance to those institutions, for example, the remand homes, they did not have the computers, they did not have, like laptops where they could work. Cases could be heard when they are in custody. But just working together, meeting like this, ensure that, for example, the prosecutor could be in his or her office, the child is at the remand home, there is a computer there, the magistrate is where they are, and the case is heard. Even the parents now, when this was done, you find that if there are bundles, that's what we call airtime for this in Kenya, available, the child can communicate with the mother or the father, where they are. You see, so that actually helped a lot in terms of creating that. And now it has gone on to a point where you could take a plea when somebody's at the police station. They don't have to wait until the day you go to court. You can take plea, and the person will process and end up where they're supposed to go. So I would say it has taken the issues of justice to another level. In some places it has eased. In other places there's a challenge where people are not able to access this. Then I would say technology has also brought injustice to them, because if they're somewhere in some remote village and the police station is in some remote place where maybe internet is not very good, then that means for them, they have to travel to where they are supposed to go in this COVID periods, or not travel and miss out or have their case delayed. So there's the two sides of it.
Yeah.
I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, yes, you have.
There's somebody saying that they can also contribute on the technology issue on the chat. I've seen someone, somebody, Florence. Can you allow her to do that?
Yes, she was actually the next person I was going to point out. She's raised her hand. Could you please mute Florence for her to be able to contribute? I believe she's also a task force member.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Florence. I work with probation department, and I just wanted to add that, yes, we realize that children, especially those in statutory institutions like probation hostels and rehabilitation schools and rescue centers and remand homes, were cut off from the world. So what we did is we introduced tele-rehabilitation, telehealth services, because even the service providers who were coming in were cut off because we closed our institutions due to the risk of COVID spreading. But we did introduce that so that interviews were being done virtually, counseling through the assistance of SEFA and other partners like ADV came in, and they were providing counseling services virtually. And so we tried as much as possible to minimize. Children were being allowed to call their relatives, like in probation hostels, we did allow that. In terms of holding family conferences with members of the family, we made a schedule to ensure that children like in probation hostels would be able to speak to their parents, because the parents could no longer visit. And this is something we are still trying to do. Of course, the challenge has been, you'll find that an institution has only one computer, or there's no computer, so they have to use one phone and all that. So those are some of the challenges that we have. But we tried as much as possible to train all the managers in statutory institutions and some field officers on how to continue providing telehealth services, especially those that touch on rehabilitation. And we have a lot of lessons. We did develop, through the assistance of ADV and SEFA, a telehealth handbook that would be used in statutory institutions also.
Thank you, Florence, for that. I feel like that's definitely a whole nother topic that we should actually get into. Basically, administration of justice in the times of COVID. And this tele-rehabilitation, I think I'm not the only one who would want to know more about the particulars of how it works. Lady Justice Maseka, even as we continue, there are a number of opinions that have come. One is that there should be a curriculum on parent training to develop effective skills, where at present many parents and caregivers abuse children in the name of discipline, and which I think in fact makes more children become more deviant, and would I say brings to delinquency. And maybe that's something we can we need research on for the universities that are currently logged on. That was just a contribution. I don't know, Lady Justice, if you have a contribution to that. And even as you respond, there is a second, there are two questions that have come in. One is from Zambia, from a gentleman called Josephat. How child-friendly is Kenya's justice system in terms of practice and infrastructure? Perhaps you can highlight what achievements there are in that. And Juliet Gashanja, who was the technical advisor to the NCAJ, thanks Juliet for logging in. She says, thank you for the wonderful presentations. And she's wondering how forums like the Task Force and the Zambian Justice Forum can be upskilled to address cross-border child protection issues. But just to respond to Juliet, before I let you, Lady Justice, one of the reasons why the ACJJ has been created is so that in case where issues are more thematic and are not necessarily for one nation, like where you're talking about cross-sectoral issues between, let's say, Kenya and Uganda, or even Kenya and Zambia, we can actually create a specific thematic group that can bring the two agencies together, or the two consortiums, where they're able to have an exchange, where they're able to capacity build and work towards coming up with solutions and learnings that would improve implementation. I would also leave that answer to Patrick, because it's also closer to the ACJJ, but we let Lady Justice to respond to the questions that have already been asked, and then we can have Patrick respond on the cross-sectoral issues.
Thank you very much, Julian. I agree with you. The issues of cross-border, that if we form this African Child Justice Forum, I think we'll be able to do that very well. Coming to the question from Zambia on child-friendly practices, actually, from the year 2001, when we had our Children's Act, we have worked very hard to have children courts. You may have heard that they only established 2 courts in this country, but every magistrate is as a gazetted children magistrate. So that's the starting point, that the magistrates, that the children, in every court station, you'll find a magistrate who handles children matters. We have had the CCPO training, people are talking about in the forum, that is the Child Care and Protection Officers Capacity Building Program, where trainings were conducted. Now we are going to start them again, but they were conducted where people who handle children in the same jurisdiction went through the same training. So that meant that they had the same standards, and wherever those people are, you'll find that they will try and carry out what they learned and carry it forward to the people who they deal with. We are setting up child protection units, our children institutions, the rehabilitation institutions, both under the Department of Children's Services and under prisons. If you had an opportunity to visit some of them, you'll be able to see that there are efforts made to ensure that they are child-friendly in having programs that ensure that rehabilitation takes place. You know, there is work in progress also to ensure the issue of reintegration back to society. But when it comes to the issue of dealing with children in the courts and handling children within the courts and within the justice system, where all these people meet at any one time, you'll find that you know, the law is there and people try to follow that law. There are challenges that come when people are not trained, but when you find that people have been trained, when they apply the law, the children benefit most. Because if you don't have people who are enabled to deal with the children, even if you have the structures in place, they don't give what is needed. So for us, I think the advantage is in that we have persons who have been enabled to do this. Of course, we also have the children courts that have what we call witness boxes, where victims do not interact with the offenders. Some of the courts have that. We have courts now that are applying, I would say, advanced, many would have spoken about that, advanced psychological processes to deal with those issues of children, especially Makadara law courts. I think for us, it is like the guiding, it's one of the courts where these things are happening, where we are actually trying to set the highest standards. You can use psychologists, play therapy, proper ways of getting information from children. So we have those in place. When it comes to investigations of offenses against children, and particularly sexual offenses, we have a whole DCI brand, a section of the DCI dealing with those issues. That is our Directorate of Criminal Investigations, dealing with those issues, investigating, prosecuting serious offenses against children, including trafficking. So I would say that we are not there, but we have taken very long strides to getting to where we want to be. So, and would welcome you to come and visit with us and share experiences. Karibu Kenya. Thank you. About training, curriculum for training, I think for parents, it's really, how do you train parents? No child comes with a manual, we know that, but the Children Act provides for certain things a court can do when the children are before the court. The family can be assessed through an order and given the appropriate psychosocial support that is there. I think some of the things that NCCS, that's the one, has a duty to do is something towards this direction, where the issue of welfare of children and parenting is part of their role. And I think the county governments also have a certain role for children who are in ECD on ensuring that there are certain welfare programs in place. You can't have welfare programs for children who are going to nursery school without involving their parents. So I think those things are in place, but maybe they have not been properly coordinated. But it's something we can do research on. Thank you.
I like the final one, and I hope the academics in the room are taking notes so that they can present for us. Ladies and gentlemen, we are coming to the end of this, and unfortunately, I might need to cut your questions short, but I will read out some of the comments that have come up. Anastasia says that she commends the NCAJ for creating a section specific in the police station, the child protection units, as they have improved juvenile justice, unlike past years when children were undergoing a lot of abuse and in the form of omission and commission. I see Juliet has written, Judge, the UNCRC, the Committee of Experts, requires the government to ensure that they train parents or develop programs for parents. And I guess based on what you have just shared, that perhaps we need to sit down further and think of the best strategies by both state and non-state actors that can be done or implemented so that parents are better at this job that they were never trained for, and so that we can help healthier families and societies that lead to less, let's say, delinquency and having children having these issues. So as we finalize, I just want to thank all the speakers of the day. Nandifa, all the way from Zambia, even if she's in absentia, she took the time to actually record her presentation for us to be able to learn and to learn something about Zambia, and also to have a bit of an experience of another country that's south from where we are at here in Nairobi. And we want to thank you again, Honorable Lady Justice Matheka, for your presentation, for enlightening us on the role of the judiciary and them leading the special task force on children's matters and creating a difference since for the past 10 years for children here in Kenya and any other children from other countries that may be passing through our legal justice system, and the flexibility to actually use ADR as envisioned in the Constitution, and also to work with technology to improve on child justice service provision. Again, I also want to thank you all the participants for those who've been able to stay with us for the past 3 hours. I hope you've learned a lot, and please don't be afraid to reach out to us on info@acjj.africa if you have any questions. If you want the presentations and the recordings, this shall actually be put live. They shall be put on our website where you're able to get various resources. If you also have resources that you'd like to share with us, feel free to actually share this with us. And I'd also want to just thank the ACJJ that has brought us here, which has been realized through the generous contribution of the Italian Agency of Development, AICS, through the Aprire project being implemented by CHEFA and its partners such as FADV and Collective Action. And lastly, not forgetting our technical support team headed by Mtoto News. Thank you, Kevin, and your team for all the work that you have done to ensure that we are comfortable, we are connected, and we are seeing what is happening. I don't know if you have the last Menti answers to present for all of us, even as I emphasize that moving forward, we shall be having more topical and thematic webinars happening at least every 2 weeks. And the next one will be happening in the next 2 weeks, where we'll be sharing more on different thematic issues that were shared in Patrick's presentation. If you have more questions again, feel free to actually write to us at info@acjj.africa, and you can also connect with us on our social media platforms, and we will be happy to continue connecting with you and contacting you for any issues. Thank you for the many people who've also filled in their details in the database. We shall be reaching out to you in a bid to see how best to actually connect with you to make this NCAJ, I've fallen in love, ACJJ more beneficial for you. And thank you again. Kevin and your team, I don't know if you're able to project before we finalize so that everyone can see the 2 questions that we had, what the responses are. We'll be closing this session in the next few minutes. And we thank you for all of you who are reaching out to us calling us and reaching out to us from the different countries where you are. So on the question of how do you think the ACJJ can contribute to the future of networking and collaboration, the biggest one there we have is capacity building, I see lobbying, resource mobilization, coordinated action, partnership creation. You'd want frequent meetings, we can pool resources and influence state agencies such as the Child Justice Forum in Zambia and also the NCAJ by being a part of them. Perhaps in the next session, we can actually ask if these agencies would open up membership to other actors, or how we can actually get our responses to these agencies. Remember, we shall also have an afternoon session where you're able to ask questions, but even if you ask after this meeting, we shall also be able to connect with you. When it comes to how does a weak network, can we please project that one? The other question. When it's about how a weak network and collaboration system affects service delivery, we see there's a lot on delayed justice, We see a lot on injustice being mentioned there. Cases are taking too long. Victims dropping out of systems, delayed integration, quality service provision to children. These are some of the issues that a weak network and collaborating system affects child service delivery. And so I will suggest that we keep thinking more on research that needs to be done. We can connect you with academia where you can actually get tips on doing proper research that can inform evidence-based implementation. And ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this session. And I just want to thank you, our partners, Chefa, ACJJ, our other contributing partners. Thank you so much for this day. Until 2 weeks from now, when we will be having our next webinar. Be blessed and take care.